Karen Itcha set fire to my daughter's medical files in front of my very own eyes, and there was nothing I could do to stop her. She had that self-satisfied smirk on her face, knowing nothing about being the deputy commissioner, with an inside track to every single offense hidden in her neat little town. My daughter now goes untreated for what her files guaranteed me, but Karen's idyllic world has just begun its downfall. Before we get into the full story, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more true life stories. I stood in my driveway, gazing in shock as smoke curled up from a metal garbage can. My hands shook as I attempted frantically to salvage any portion of my daughter's charred medical records. A decade of important documentation, all now nothing but ash. "Rules are rules, Mr. Callahan," Victoria stated icily, arms crossed. "No unattractive medical equipment in view from the sidewalk. HOA bylaws, Section 8, Paragraph 4. The name's James Callahan. Up until now, no one in this community had a clue that I was the deputy commissioner for the county health department. My family and I relocated to Lakeview Estates 6 months ago. The single-story design made it simpler for my daughter Maddie to get around, due to her condition. That ugly equipment is a nerve stimulation device," I tried to explain, my voice faltering. "She needs it for her condition, and those documents were her medical records, records we need for a critical treatment next week." Victoria shrugged superficially. "You left them on the porch. They were blowing around. I was just picking up loose trash, keeping our community nice and tidy." Anger was boiling within me, ready to overflow. "Do you know what you've done? Some of these tests can't be repeated. Some of the experts have retired or relocated on the other side of the country. Those were our only copies." She waved away from me, as if swishing at a fly. "Should have been more careful with something so crucial," she said. "Now have that equipment off your front porch tomorrow, or you'll be charged $200 for each day it's left outside." She began to turn away, and I called after her, voice low but sharp. "You should learn who I am, Victoria." She turned her head, one raised eyebrow. "And who in the world are you?" "I'm the deputy commissioner for county health and safety," I told her firmly. For an instant, something crossed her eyes. Concern, perhaps. But she covered it up quickly. "That doesn't let you off the hook for obeying HOA rules, Mr. Callahan," she said coldly. As she walked back to her perfect home with its perfect yard, I stared down at the burned papers in my hands. How was I going to have to tell Maddie that her life-altering, crucial treatment could now be delayed, or worse, possibly canceled altogether? Maddie's unusual nerve disorder had been under control until 6 months ago. That's when a sudden flare-up left permanent damage. At only 15, she was dealing with issues no teenager should ever have to face. The new treatment protocol at Boston Medical Center was our last true hope. But it hinged on complete, comprehensive medical records. Records now reduced to ashes. "What do you mean? They burned my records," Maddie demanded that evening. Her voice was shaking, muddled, afraid. On the bedside table, her nerve stimulation device pulsed softly. That small green glow was a perpetual reminder of the fight she endured every day. "The HOA president thought they were trash," I told her, trying to infuse calm into my voice so she wouldn't get more panicked. "We're going to attempt getting replacements, but some might not be salvageable. The treatment next week, there's a possibility it might get delayed." "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," I concluded, feeling my heart shatter. Her eyes welled up with tears, but Maddie nodded quietly. "It's not your fault, Dad, but it definitely seemed like it." I had placed those records on the porch while assisting her into the car for a physical therapy appointment. A gust of wind blew a few pages around. Rather than merely returning them, Victoria perceived it as her opportunity to administer a lesson in neighborhood cleanliness. The following 2 weeks were hell. I made constant phone calls, sent email after email, and went to see every single one of Maddie's previous doctors. Dr. Reynolds, he'd retired to Florida, and with him his handwritten records. Dr. Chen's clinic, they'd gone digital, but a server crash last year had erased part of Maddie's information. And the hospital where she had her very first, the specialist tests? The new regime had moved in, and their record system was a complete shambles. It was chaotic. Meanwhile, Maddie's pain insinuated itself stronger with every passing day. She attempted to conceal it, smiling when I glanced, winching only when my back was turned. But I saw, naturally I saw. The window for treatment was closing fast, and every single day without treatment risked additional, permanent harm to Maddie's nervous system. "Dad, will I ever be okay?" she asked one evening, fidgeting uncomfortably in bed, attempting to relieve the ache. "We're doing all we can," I said, hoping that would be enough, hoping I could do more. As we struggled to save Maddie's health, Victoria pressed on with her petty tyranny. She imposed a $150 fine upon the Millers because their trash cans could be seen 6 hours after pickup time. The Gonzalez family was fined $200 because the basketball hoop in their son's yard was visible from the street. It was bad enough about poor Mrs. Johnson, almost 80 years old, being sent a violation notice because she had painted her mailbox the wrong brown shade. Each small transgression was captured in photographs, entered into records, and fined with increasingly escalating sanctions. But I wasn't sitting around. Far from it. As deputy commissioner, I had access to all the county databases, building permits, complaints filed by citizens, inspection results, you name it. Daily, I was building something impressive, a case, a tempest. The HOA meeting was set to take place the following night at 7 p.m. at the community center. I got there early with Maddie by my side, getting out my laptop, projector, and papers. Victoria entered precisely at 6:55, as usual. Her intricately styled blonde hair didn't budge. She scanned the room until she spotted us, and glared. "Mr. Callahan," she stated, voice dripping with condescension, "I trust you're not going to hijack this meeting with complaints about the rules you've chosen not to obey." "Not on your life, Victoria," I said with a smooth reply, flashing a tight smile. "I'm here in my official capacity, as the county's deputy commissioner, to share some findings." The room began to fill rapidly. More residents than I'd ever seen at one of these dry, procedural meetings were arriving. People took their seats, whispering to one another, glancing curiously in our direction. Something told me tonight wasn't going to be a normal meeting. At precisely 7 p.m., Victoria formally called the meeting to order. She rushed through the routine items: approval of last month's minutes, review of financial summary, obviously eager to get to the finish. Then, with visible reluctance, she introduced me to present. I rose, taking Maddie and her nerve stimulation device with me. Standing before the room as a group, I started. "First, I'd like everyone to meet my daughter, Maddie. 3 weeks ago, someone in this very community destroyed her medical records, records that were vital for her upcoming treatment. That act of destruction has now delayed her care and brought her immense pain and suffering." Whispers rippled through the room. Some people looked confused, others horrified. "But that's not the reason I'm here tonight," I continued, voice firm. "I'm not here as a grieving father. I'm here in my official capacity as the Deputy Commissioner for Health and Safety to reveal a number of very serious violations taking place in our neighborhood. Violations that put all of you at risk." I clicked to the first slide. County building permits from the last 4 years. Over the years, Lakeview Estates has experienced many home and neighborhood changes. But here's where the trouble lies. Many of those changes were not only unendorsed by the county, they also defy common-sense safety standards. I walked through each slide, presenting alarming examples: substandard electrical work done by unlicensed individuals, pool systems involving toxic chemicals installed without safety measures, even structural repairs to the clubhouse that hadn't been inspected and could come crashing down during an earthquake. "None of these projects went through the county permit process," I said, standing and facing the room. "But every single one was approved by your HOA board, and more specifically, Victoria Harrington." Gasps, whispers. Eyes looked to Victoria. She jumped from her seat, face red. "This is ridiculous. The HOA can make changes as it sees fit without outside judgment." I shook my head once, remaining unflappable. "Actually, that's untrue. Although the HOA will impose additional constraints, it is not allowed to circumvent safety regulations of counties and states. It's irresponsible, illegal," I paused, "to do so." I moved on to the next slide. But here's the clincher. The screen flashed open with financial spreadsheets, payments from the HOA to construction contractors, and then something critical in a single detail muffled the room. Each contractor that has been employed by the HOA over the last 3 years is listed to one address. I zoomed in. The address was that of Thomas Harrington, Victoria's husband. Every contract, every project, all traceable back to her own home before her condition took a turn. "Here's my daughter, Maddie," I told her, voice soft but firm. "She was able to skate, laugh, and live without her being in agony last winter. That's what was taken from her, not merely incinerated papers, but days, well-being, and dreams. And all because somebody chose their personal authority over the life of another human being." The room had gone quiet once more, but this time it wasn't the strained quiet of rage. It was the oppressive quiet of understanding. No one was staring at the screen anymore. They were staring at Victoria. Victoria stood stock still, her lips clamped together, but the familiar mask of control had cracked. Her eyes flicked toward the door. "I don't know how many of you are going to get fined this week," I said, shutting my laptop. "But you deserve a board more concerned about the residents of this community than about penalizing them. A board that hears, one that legally, ethically, and humanely acts." Applause started, hesitant at first, growing into a tide. Others rose to their feet, applauding, calling out in solidarity. Some shouted towards Victoria, insisting on her resignation. Mrs. Johnson, the older lady who was fined for the color of her mailbox, stood gripping her cane and stated, "Enough is enough." Victoria remained silent. She wordlessly folded her papers, never looking up at anyone, and exited the room. Maddie squeezed my hand. "Does that mean I can still receive the treatment?" she asked gently. I knelt down at her side and smiled, though tears burned my eyes. "We've lost time, sweetheart, but we're recovering it." Opened it and found Victoria in front of her, holding a small box. She didn't resemble the woman who used to walk around the neighborhood with clipboard and icy look. Her hair was tied loosely back, and her eyes were red, as if she had been crying. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said softly, "but Maddie did already. I wanted to bring this back." She gave me the box. It contained burned but partly recovered papers, shredded pieces of Maddie's original medical records. I went through the HOA trash can after that evening. I couldn't recover much, but I tried. I stood there in silence for a long moment. Then I nodded once, accepting the action. Not an excuse, not an apology, but perhaps a beginning. "She's going in for the procedure tomorrow," I said to her. "I know," she said. "I hope it helps. I truly do." When I closed the door, Maddie was standing behind me. "Was that?" she asked. I nodded. She looked sad. "She is," I said, "but sadness doesn't fix what's broken. People do." The next day, as Maddie was wheeled into the operating room, I held her hand and whispered, "You're brave, kiddo. We've got you." And for the first time in months, I believed it. Truth at last being revealed, and the little acts of courage and forgiveness that created the greatest change. I pushed a lock of hair out of her forehead and smiled. "No, honey," I said quietly. "We didn't win. We made something different. That's better." She nodded, drifting off, her hand in mine. Outside, the neighborhood was still, not the strained, expectant quiet of earlier, but something softer, a pause, a breath, a new beginning. And for the first time in a very long time, I thought things could actually get better, starting now. I remained with Maddie well past the time she went to sleep, my ear cocked to listen to the soft cadence of her breathing, the soft beeping of the nerve stimulator, and the whisper of wind through the leaves outside. The house was no longer heavy with tension, less so at least. The tension that had lingered in every corner like an abandoned coat was finally beginning to dissipate. The following morning, some of the neighbors stopped by. They had baked goods, helping hands, and smiling faces. Mr. Davis stopped by with tools in hand, wanting to know if I needed something fixed in the house. Mrs. Johnson dropped off a batch of casseroles and Maddie's favorite blanket. Even the Millers offered to cut the lawn for a few weeks so that I could devote myself to her recuperation. It was as if the neighborhood had remembered how to be a community again. At the community center, Victoria followed through. I caught up with her there a few days later, quiet, intent, sorting through piles of disorganized files and a clipboard and highlighter. She wasn't talkative, but she didn't have to be. Her being there, her commitment to staying, was a statement in itself. Eventually, things settled into a sort of peace. The new HOA board, headed by Mr. Turner and Mrs. Edwards, made transparency, fairness, and compassion their top priorities. Fines were replaced by friendly reminders. Punishment was replaced by offers of assistance. And Maddie, courageous, strong Maddie, received her treatment. It wasn't a miracle cure. Her pain didn't disappear, and there were still tough days. But the new treatment made a difference. Her mobility increased. The flare-ups came less often. Gradually, she began to take back the small parts of life she'd lost. Playing music again, venturing outdoors without dread, even attempting to skate with a special brace. We sat on the back porch one evening, months after it had all happened, staring up at the stars. "Dad," she said, "do you think people can really change?" I gazed at her, remembering Victoria in the community center, remembering the angry voices at the HOA meeting, remembering the quiet apologies and second chances. "Yes," I said, "if they're willing to see who they used to be and choose to be someone better." She nodded, then rested her head on my shoulder. Ultimately, this wasn't merely a tale of rules or vengeance. It was one of community, of standing up, of healing, and of a girl who, despite pain, taught everyone in her world the true meaning of strength and forgiveness. The neighborhood rallied around us, not with words but with action. Neighbors brought over meals, gave us rides, and called to check in. Even Victoria, in her own subtle manner, started to do things to set things right. "No, sweetheart," I said softly one evening when Maddie asked if we'd won. "Nobody actually won in this case, but perhaps everybody learned something valuable." Maddie smiled, already closing her eyes. "Then it was worth it." As I watched her drift off to sleep, her face peaceful, her pain controlled by the initial treatment stages, I understood that the ultimate revenge wasn't Victoria's destruction, or the changes to the HOA rules, or even the public revelation of all that she'd done. The victory was, instead, that we never allowed her cruelty to transform us into individuals we didn't want to become. Kind, forgiving, strong. That was a kind of strength no one could take from us. Sometimes the strongest thing you can possibly do isn't to get even. It's to not let another person's evil change the goodness within you. Maddie got that more than anyone. And because of her, even in all that we had lost, we had found something much longer lasting. Knowing that how you react to something unjust says way more about you than the thing itself. In the months that followed, our community grew closer and kinder. The new HOA led with empathy, focusing on unity instead of control. Victoria kept her word and volunteered at the community center. She started quietly, sorting papers and keeping to herself. But over time, she became an advocate for families with special needs children, especially those navigating complex medical systems. And Maddie, her therapy wasn't the miracle we used to imagine, but it worked. Some days were better than others, but each day she endured it all with the same quiet courage and dignity that had transformed not only Victoria, but all of us. Sometimes the best endings aren't perfect. They're just better than where the story started.